Good afternoon and welcome to the Tuesday, November 14th meeting of the Pitt County Board of Social Services. I'd like to call the meeting to order and have us observe a moment of silent prayer or silent meditation. Amen. Susan, no one signed up to speak.
Madam Chair?
Yes, ma'am?
That we approve the agenda as distributed.
I think we have
I have two
amendments
Okay.
from our director.
Okay. We have received some funding from Neighbor to Neighbor, and we would like to put that on the agenda for y'all to approve that funding. We also need to approve a social media policy for our foster parents and need to add that to the agenda if possible.
Okay, so for the social media policy, I think it needs to go as an item for discussion.
Right.
The neighbor to neighbor is standard money coming from the town of Ayden that you can add to your budget. Are we okay with putting that one on as an item for consent?
Yes, Madam Chair, except the adjustments are made.
Okay, we have
For
a
the
motion
agenda.
to accept the agenda as amended. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor of adoption of the agenda, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, first item on the agenda today, the October board meeting minutes were in your packet. I wasn't here, so I can't attest to the accuracy, but if someone who was here would like to make a motion to accept these minutes, or if changes are necessary.
So moved.
Okay. All right, the minutes from the October meeting have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Thank you very much. Items for consent. Inside your packet is the daycare policy reflecting the latest round of changes from Raleigh since we tried to adopt this policy, 2 months ago?
Multiple times.
So, unless you have questions for Jan, is there anything substantive to point out?
The only change is that we are now required to provide a set-aside for homeless population. And so that has now been blended with the special needs allocation. And so we now have what is called a vulnerable population set aside of 4%. It used to be just the special needs population set aside for 4%. So not a major change, just making sure that those kids get some preferential treatment.
I do have a question. Where would the military children fit into this? Or do they fall in it at any point? Since we are near military bases,
They would fit pretty much within the
Within any of them?
categories that we have, right.
just want to make sure we didn't omit and leave them out.
Okay, so we have the daycare policy and we have the budget amendment from the town of Ayden for neighbor. Do we have a motion to accept the two consent items?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the two consent items. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we do items for discussion. Do you want to do the social media first or last?
Why don't we do that last and let's
Okay.
get through.
So the first item is Low Income Energy Assistance Program, or LEAP, and Brian Averett.
The Low Income Energy Assistance Program begins on December 1st. This program provides a one-time vendor payment to families who qualify. The payment received is either $200, $300, or $400, depending on the family size and income. We will begin taking applications December 1st, and we will conclude on March 31st unless the funds are exhausted prior to that date. The county mails the LEAP check directly to the client's vendor. So whatever utility company that provides the service receives the payment directly. And we've talked about benefit size. The priority group is households who have an individual age 60 or older, or someone living in the household who is receiving disability and also receiving a service through the Division of Aging and Adult Services. So someone may receive disability, but if they're not receiving service through the Division of Aging and Adult Services, they would not be in the priority group. So people in the priority group may apply between December 1st and the end of December. Then anybody who falls outside the priority group, and we need the account where the how the utilities are provided. We will be operating, and our county office is the Pitt County Human Services Center at 203 Government Circle, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. We are finalizing hours of operation for our 10 community partners. And when we have all that finalized and do our press release, that information will be on the county website at pittcountync.gov. And we'll keep that updated as the program progresses. And we plan to have that release prior to the end of November in time for people to see the information before December 1st. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have.
And in the packet, there is a list of those providers that have indicated, the groups in the community have indicated their willingness to work with us again this year.
It's very similar to past
Right,
years.
right.
And those were confirmed at the time that we put this packet together. I have heard from the Salvation Army since then, and they are participating again with us this year.
Let me ask a question. How
Yes.
far is Farmville from Fountain?
Well, I don't know exactly.
Is it roughly, I can't remember.
I don't know.
The reason I was asking, because it looked like a good range of where residents, the reason I'm bringing this up, this list seemed a good range from where residents live on the outskirts. And the only one I could think about was that Fountain is a municipality on an outskirt, but I don't have any idea. So I can't recall, I haven't driven that distance between Fountain and Farmville in a long time.
It's probably about between 10 and 15 minutes. If you leave Fountain and go toward Farmville, it's a direct shot.
That's a direct, thank you, but I was trying to figure out time-wise. So we can make it convenient for the residents in all areas of our municipalities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. No action needed, right?
No.
Okay. Child Support Social Worker 2, Jan Elliott and Angela Hart.
And this will need action.
Okay.
We are recommending the addition of a social worker to provide employment services to our non-custodial parents. We have non-custodial parents who are looking for work, non-custodial parents who need work in order for them to be able to pay their child support. And so we began to talk about this because obviously our non-custodial parents have many of the same problems that our parents that we deal with in our other programs have. They have trouble getting and keeping jobs, and that has an impact on them and their children. It also winds up with folks having to go to jail, and that's not where we want folks to go. They can't support their children if they're sitting in jail. So what we would like to do is have the employment social worker attend child support court to work with those non-custodial parents to help them get and obtain jobs, job training, help them develop a plan of action, provide any support services, counseling that might be necessary with the goal of achieving employment that is ongoing for these individuals. And clearly the child would benefit because the absent parent is able to pay that child support. The non-custodial parent should get a sense of pride because they are able to support their children. And that really is what most of the folks we work with want to do. They want to support their children and be a resource for their children. And certainly for the county, it would reduce the cost of incarceration. And it would provide, reduce the amount of benefits potentially that we're having to pay out on behalf of some of the individuals. So with all that in mind, we're recommending this position. The pay grade is a 67, shows you what the salary fringe for the first year would be, shows you the annual cost also, and this would be paid for with 100% money through the child support incentive dollars. And this, we get an average of $152, almost $153,000 a year that we can count on, and then there sometimes are additional funds released for us. So it shouldn't cost the county anything, and we think this would be a really good investment of the dollars. Obviously, the state and the federal government's gonna wanna see what happens as a result of this, to decide if they want to continue to support this. But we believe this would be a really good opportunity to assist our absent parents. And we would take this to the commissioners, obviously, if you all approve going forward with this. They would have to authorize the position. Questions?
I read this policy, and I'm excited because those parents who pay child support sometimes get locked up, and the end result is that they lose their job. And so the family suffers because of that. So I'm very excited on this policy. I really am pleased that we are putting it in place so that they can continue paying taxes.
Right. And obviously, it would take a little while for this to get through the commissioners, get the position established, and get somebody hired. So we wouldn't see much this year, but in the coming year, I think we would see significant benefit.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Would the worker involved in this position work with the non-custodial parents on financial literacy in addition to seeking employment
And I have Michelle here to help us with all this, and she is our program manager for child support.
That will be one of the areas for assessment and potentially be able to make referrals to our Life of NC partner that works with things like financial literacy.
Okay.
So, yes.
And Angela, you don't have that $152,000 already programmed in the budget to support?
I do, but with it being child support incentives, we just have to, with it being a new position, we just have to go through the approval process like we would if we were doing the budget.
And we did use some of this money last year to support the implementation of Northwoods, and of course, that money, that initial cost won't need to be used this coming year, so that's freed up some dollars.
So you don't already have this programmed in as a revenue stream to offset some other cost inside of the child support budget?
No, we can choose from any of the anything that would be normally charged to 4D or to child support. But if it's something we want to try new, we just have to get permission and we can use it for that instead. But everything else is budgeted within child support to cover. We can just report it as normal and do it as normal.
And in the budget this year, we did program in the dollars as a revenue, but they
Right.
weren't tied to any specific, because we have
Correct,
to
but if you
budget those in.
programmed them in as a revenue, there's an offsetting expense already in place.
What we
Because your
do-
budget has to balance.
Right. What we did, we have a line for the incentive expenses and the revenue.
Okay, so you have a
they were
line that's
programmed
called
in.
incentive expenses that you can reduce to then increase the salary line item.
Right, right.
Is that your question?
No, I do. My question was also for July 1 of 18, for the fiscal year 18, 19. So this will be, this is multiple positions, right? More than
No, one.
So it's
One position. We just gave you the 6-month figure and the 12-month figure,
What
so you would see
annual-
the difference.
So the 152,906 represents what?
No, that's the money we receive.
The annual amount of incentive
Yes.
income.
Yeah, that's the incentive income we've received historically, and then there is generally later in the year, a settlement that comes in that increases that, but we are pretty guaranteed this a month.
For instance, last fiscal year, we received, what was budgeted was $156,978. We received those in monthly installments starting in October of $17,442. Then in June, we received a settlement amount of $122,822. And all of these dollars have to be reinvested into child support
So-
specifically.
So
And we
next-
have to give them a report showing how we spent
Right,
these
but for
dollars.
next year, for example, if your revenue, your incentive is 150,000 and you're using 60 of it to fund this position, then you only have the remaining 90 for other incentive activities.
Right.
Because half of or part of the activities are the position you're funding.
Correct.
So next year's budget, we will stipulate, allocate, appropriate this position and dedicate those incentive dollars.
To cover it.
To cover it.
Right.
Right.
And we have, ever since I've been here, we've been getting child support incentives. We always get around from $200,000 to $270,000 a year.
With
And
the
it
settlement.
has to be with the settlement, and it has to be reinvested in child support.
Okay. Other questions?
I'd like to make the motion that we approve this
And
budget,
recommend that they carry it forward to the county commissioners?
that we send it forward.
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, state child fatality policy.
Okay,
Oh, I'm sorry, Gwen, that's yours. I'm looking at Jan and hearing you, sorry.
the state has expanded, the way that child fatalities are being reviewed. And, we do have an intensive child, fatality review process already in place now. And when a child dies that DSS has had contact with within 12 months of that child's death, then we send a report to Raleigh, and they determine whether there will be an intensive review on this child death, and we convene a child fatality team, which Jim Cox is a part of and participates in, and we review that child's death. At this time, the state has decided that they're gonna expand the process of reviewing child fatalities to include a process to review the fatality prior to it going to the intensive child review process. And that process is this 7-day review process that is effective November 1st. And the North Carolina Division of Social Services has an on-site review team that will review all child fatalities of children who are either in the custody of DSS or children who are part of an active in-home services case at the time of the fatality. The review of the fatality is not to investigate the cause of the death of the child, but it's to review whether the county followed the policies and procedures and the social work practices as outlined by state and federal guidelines. The information that is gathered during the review of the record, it will be used to enhance the service provision of the county DSS after the team has reviewed the record. The county agency must report within 1 business day of learning of the fatality to the state that the fatality has occurred. And this will be with foster care cases and with in-home services cases that are active at the time of the child's death. Upon notification of the fatality, the child, the state then has 7 days to come in and review that record. And the county is expected to prepare and present that record to the state for their review within that 7-day time period. The process could go beyond 1 or 2 days of review. It just depends on how long the child has been in care or how long DSS has been involved with the child. So once the they come in and they have reviewed the record, they will provide a report back to the county. And they use the on-site review instrument to review the record. And this instrument is a state and federal record that outlines the policies and procedures that should have been followed during the management of the case record. They also review the social worker and the supervisors involved. And at the end of the review, a report is provided back to the DSS director around the policies and procedures and the resources that were provided to the family during the time that the agency was involved with the case. The report is used to determine whether an intensive child and family services review will be completed with this particular death of this child. So one of the reasons the state has said they wanted to set up this 7-day review and have the state come in immediately following the child's death is to be able to mitigate the risk factors with that may have impacted the child's death. They want to be involved early on, be able to know what the issues are with the county, if there are any issues in practice, and then pass that on to the Intensive Child and Family Services Review Team when they come in to review the child's death. A letter will be drafted after the review of the 7-day review is done. A letter is drafted, and one of the things that I needed to let the board know is that a copy of that letter will be sent to the DSS board chair, and you will be notified of the results of that review, the recommendations of that review, and how it might impact any changes in how the agency does their practice and how they respond to families. Any questions?
So Gwen, this will be, at the 7-day review, they will determine whether or not there's the need for the full review within that year period of time.
Right.
So this is in addition to the existing process.
This is in addition to the existing process. And what this process also allows is that it looks at the county's practice and their social work practice, how they have responded to the family, the resources they've provided, and before the state comes in to do the intensive review, we've already will have been given guidance around any changes we might need to make in how we do our work.
And there are a couple of reasons for this. Obviously, they are very far behind with the larger review process. And as Gwen said, this is only for active cases in those two areas. So the intensive review around cases in investigations or cases that have been closed within the last year are still going to be intensive reviewed, but would not be part of this process. I believe I said that right.
Got it.
Because the process is effective this past November 1, moving forward. And only for new cases that came up after November 1st?
No. It would be for any death that occurred after November
Right.
1st, but the case would have been active with us.
No, I meant
yeah.
the fatality
Yeah.
had to have occurred after November 1
Right.
for it to fall under this process.
Correct.
Right. And the state's immediate response will be a huge change in how they have responded to fatalities in the past. If a fatality occurred, it could be a year or more before the state came in to review the record. But now when one occurs, they will be in the county within 3 days and doing that review within a 7-day period.
Based on the fact that you have been able to provide them the county's handling of it in that same first week as well,
Yes,
right?
we have to
So,
provide the record.
so somebody's gonna have to stop and pull all that together
Yes,
immediately now.
Right.
right.
And we will also be dealing with the staff around the trauma of having a child death in their caseload. So all of those things will be going on at the same time. And so there's been some angst as a result of the fact that, you know, you're coming in while we're still trying to deal with the fatality and the impact of that fatality. But at the same time, the state, and don't disagree necessarily that the state believes they need to get in here quickly so they know what has transpired and what the potential issues are.
Which means that documentation, immediate documentation,
Needs to be current.
continuous documentation needs
It's
to
critical.
happen.
Right.
Mhm.
So is there any action you need from us other than to let us know?
Just letting you know, and that you will get a letter. The board chair will receive a letter as a result of any of these reviews.
So then
that
is
are
there
done.
some notice that we need when a situation occurs so that we know that that letter should be forthcoming?
I would think we would certainly want to make you aware of the fact that that has occurred, because you will be looking for that letter, and what I would think we would do is make a copy for every board member. Now, you won't get the details, the specific details, but you'll understand what the issues were that were identified, and we have to develop a corrective action plan around those issues.
Would this be something that would not be discussed in an open board meeting, or?
Because we're not going to talk about the case specifics, we could talk about it in an open board meeting, okay? A child fatality, if we were going to be talking about what child and how all this happened, then that would need to be done in a closed session.
But this is also about continuous quality improvement of practice for the county, and getting in there early on and identifying what it is the county
There's
might
some
need to
systemic
work on.
issue or-
Right, the systemic issues, and so that the county can start to work on those things.
And Commissioner Perkins Williams had asked for information about child fatalities, and I did put for each of you a copy of the Child Fatality Task Force report. Now, these were deaths for any reason. I mean, these were not necessarily children we were involved with, but you all do have a copy of the report, and it breaks it down county by county, some basic information. So that's not connected necessarily to this letter, but wanted you to be aware that, that you did receive that information and why. Also, attached to the letter, Susan was doing really well in trying to save paper. And so Mr. Cox had asked for a list of foster children and where they were located. And so this is where Pitt County has all of our foster children sitting. And so that was attached to the back of this letter because we were multi-siding. So it's totally unrelated to the letter, but is information that had been requested.
So as long as Gwen needs nothing else,
Right.
we are now aware of the new policy, and unless there are more questions, we'll move to your quarterly report.
No, needed to the social media.
Oh, sorry, that's right.
Get
We
the
added
social
on
media,
the
right.
social media policy,
Right.
which was placed, a draft of it was placed at everyone's seat.
At everyone's seat, right. We have been running into situations where a lot of our foster parents are starting to post pictures of children that they have in their care on Facebook. And although we have cautioned some of them about that, because we don't have a specific policy, it just says, you know, you're not to share information that these children are foster children. Unfortunately, when you start posting the pictures, you start making comments, and before you know it, you've gone down a slippery slope. And so we're beginning to get complaints that foster parents have been posting on Facebook pictures of the children. Foster parents have tried to mitigate that by putting emojis over the children's faces so you can't actually see the children's faces. but sometimes even then you can. And you forget sometimes, and there might be a video out there of the children, and you know, we're just on a very slippery slope. So based on some conversation with our county attorney, Ms. Gallagher, and based on some internal discussion and some discussion with the state, we feel like it's really important to make it clear to our foster parents that, and it's consistent with the policy that we have with, you know, Methodist Home for Children, Baptist Home for Children. We don't let them put the children in brochures and publish their pictures and those kinds of things. So it's very consistent with that policy that we are saying, you know, we don't want our children on Facebook. And so you have a draft of the policy in front of you, and you know, it pretty much says we don't want the postings. We don't want it for a variety of reasons. One, you know, birth parents and biological parents can see where the children are and get information. And although we do a lot of joint parenting, you still need to be careful about that. We're concerned too because predators are roaming through the Facebook pages these days. And some of our children, you know, may fall prey to that if we're not careful. We want our children, you know, to be treated like other children in the home, but clearly those pictures need to be in the family album and not posted out on Facebook. We are concerned about confidentiality. We're concerned about a variety of issues. What I will say too is some of these postings are now showing up in court when we go to court, and that too is creating problems for us. So we believe that it is best to adopt a policy. In talking with the state has said that they're not to identify the child as a foster child in any way. But the agency, that's pretty much all the state says about it. And the agency, the specific agency, can adopt more stringent policies than the state has. And so we are basically adopting more stringent policies by saying just don't post.
Well,
so we need your permission to go forward. Any questions?
I'm concerned about that new one that's out. Snapchat, where
Right.
you go, you didn't mention that, you just said
Well,
Facebook.
no.
That's a separate kind of.
Right. The policy's being written to address all
Oh,
social
okay.
media as it relates to posting of pictures and or videos.
Good,
So we call it
good.
social media as opposed to Facebook.
Are
Good.
there consequences attached?
Well, what we're saying in here is it could result in license revocation. Now,
And my question is, are there other consequences? I mean, that would be the ultimate for a foster
Right.
parent to lose their license.
Right.
But is this against the law? Could this be a misdemeanor or anything like that?
No.
No?
No.
Okay.
It's a violation of
It's just a violation of
confidentiality.
confidentiality.
And technically, I guess violating confidentiality is a misdemeanor, but it would be, I think, kind of harder to deal with in this kind of situation.
So I assume that foster parents in their training get training in confidentiality already. And risk associated with that.
They do, but you know, Facebook and social media are beginning to crop up more and more, and I don't know that we've really focused on that in the past. So what we want to do is send a letter to all of our foster parents indicating that this is the new policy. We would need to start using this in the training that we do with foster parents, and we probably need to, we do need to get all of our foster parents to sign that they have received this and understand this.
There may be some cases where they need to be alert of what is happening in the environment where the children are. Because if they're out in the park or something and somebody is videotaping and Facebooking it, they need to be aware to step in front of or protect the child.
Well, I think, you know, all of us would want to be aware if anybody was taping our children that we didn't know
Yeah.
or whatever. And certainly
'Cause
we
it
would
happens.
hope, we would certainly hope that they would protect our children just like they would protect their own children. But
Because you never know what they're going to do with it.
you don't know. You don't
And
know.
when you get your license revoked, is that forever?
I don't really know.
Revocation is forever.
Okay.
Okay.
I couldn't remember. Right. So, and there is an appeals process for that.
Okay.
So, you know, this would be tested if that happened, I'm sure.
And, how do you plan to police and enforce?
Yeah.
Well, you know, again, we have gotten complaints. We have a lot of people in this agency who are friends with lots of our foster parents and are seeing the postings. We have parents and parent attorneys who are sharing with us. I saw this child on Facebook. So, I mean, it's not like we're gonna have to rely somewhat on the honesty and the reports that we get and that kind of thing. Because I don't know that we can go on everybody's Facebook page every day and make sure. And we at this point are not saying that they have to take down what they've already put out there. There is some thought that perhaps we should, you know, that we make this retroactive and take it down. I didn't put that in here, but certainly we could add that if you all feel that's important.
And what happens if it's others who are posting it and not the foster parent?
Well, see, that's the issue.
That's
That-
what I was.
Yeah,
I mean-
and that's the issue that I'm concerned about, in part, not for the same reason y'all are, but in part that once, you know, somebody sees this and then passes it on and puts it on their page. And so then you really have lost control of it. If it's, I think foster parents have the responsibility to say to friends and neighbors, you know, you can take the picture, but you can't post it anywhere because this is confidential. I mean, grandma might want to take a picture to have in her album of the children that are being raised, and that's fine. That's fine.
Jan, what about if it's done like in total innocence? A picture of the family is there and the child is not named as a foster parent and is just out there. I mean, what would the liability, what would the danger be in that kind of scenario? And also, kin to that question, you mentioned that it has come up in court. Without going into detail, if you could just share why that.
What happens, for example, parents or parent attorneys are on Facebook, and they do a picture of the page. I don't know all the technical terms, but they can do a picture of the page, and they've presented, I mean, we do that a lot.
But how is it?
But if it's just a group shot
A
that
group
says
shot
fun
that-
at Brock's Farm.
Right.
And nothing says that this is Becky Starkey foster
Right.
child.
Right,
Then
right.
where does it become?
Well, what we're seeing is lots of pictures of a child in some activity with the natural child,
Okay.
maybe out trick-or-treating, maybe at this park, maybe at this hamburger joint. And then there's always some caption that goes along. And the caption is part of where we get into trouble. But again, people are trolling those pages, and people who are looking for things are doing that. Now, I agree, the group picture of, you know, the extended family or whatever, that's gonna be hard. But again, the policy itself is that you're not to post those children out there and put them on display, and, you know, name them as foster children.
I can understand it, the general, but to me, that is singling a foster child as separate from the family. And when I was working in foster care, we wanted the jail and the harmony.
Right.
And now, if nothing is incriminating on the Facebook posting or whatever, maybe I'm missing something.
Well, no, and it's gonna get really subjective. But, and, you know, I don't disagree. I mean, I want the family portrait. The family portrait needs to sit on the mantle, you know. But if I say, okay, well, as long as it's the family portrait, and then the next thing you know, there's another picture, and then there's another picture, and then there's another
Somebody
picture.
walks in the
Well,
house and snaps.
So what would that picture be that would be in violation? I mean, if the child is not named and it's not stated that this is my foster child, so-and-so,
If it's not named, if it's not stated, if it's in a group shot, then that probably wouldn't be a problem. But it's not happening that way, and Tammy may want to come up and speak to some of the
I would
issues
love to
also.
know how it is
Because
being
I just think
presented.
your enforceability of this is gray as gray can be,
I-
because to me, it's either you can't post,
Carry.
period, or you can post but just not identify. I don't see how you're gonna explain this to 100 different families
And the foster children.
and the children who then feel excluded because you
Right,
can't
right.
put the birthday party picture out there that says, all the Bryans enjoying, you know,
Well, you know, and some of
Part-
our foster
playtime at
parents are real good about taking the back of the child.
So
You
some
know.
of them already do that, are
Yeah,
sensitive to
they're,
it.
they're sensitive to it, and they're taking pictures with, you know, the birthday party, but they making sure that the foster child's back is to the
Because of
camera.
existing
Right,
policy.
when they put it on Facebook, you know,
I
so.
guess the other concern is what if the parent sees the child?
And what will that do other than tell what
Stalking.
family it's with?
Right, what family is with,
What
it could
state?
lead to privacy concerns about, you know, whether, that now somebody sees my child with another family, confidentiality again, and then they could have access to the foster parents'
But what's the
page.
difference in that and going out in public somewhere with a foster child and being seen by, say, 10 of the same people that would be on Facebook? I mean, I really, truly don't understand it if the child is not named as a foster parent and the family is not named as a foster family, and it's not being done in any kind incriminating or negative type way. I don't know,
I would think that if you're out in public, that's a snapshot
I
in
agree.
time. I mean, it's just a one-time thing. I see you at the Walmart. I see you. But with Facebook, you have this multiplicity. It can just go on and on and on, just infinity. People show up on my page that I don't even know. They're friends of my friends of my friends. And so that's the difference I see between just being out in public versus being on social media.
And it winds up on somebody else's page
Page.
because there's a way that, again, I
can
don't
be
do
shared.
Facebook,
Yeah.
but there's
Be
a way that
shared.
it's shared, and then those folks can say, you know, look at what a wonderful job these folks are doing with their foster child, XYZ, which the foster parents didn't post, but had they not posted at all, we wouldn't have that problem.
And then if you're looking at reunification, sometimes biological parents may take retribution out on the child when they visit. You know, how dare you have a good time with this other family? You know we love you, that kind of thing. So I can see that even though this is slippery
It
and
is
may
a
be hard, but at least you have a policy that you can refer to and that the foster parents can actually sign and say, I'm aware of this.
So Jan, just generally in the training, do you have them sign off in any confidentiality statement?
They
They
do
do.
sign off on
They do.
So I
confidentiality.
guess my
Yeah.
question is,
It's
would-
slippery.
is there need for a separate policy, or do you just add this to the existing confidentiality policy?
I mean, we possibly could do that. I know a lot of the directors I talk with, their agencies have done a social media policy as it relates to foster children. And I mean, you probably could incorporate it. It's just we wanted to send out a letter that says, you know, we're setting up the rules now because
Gotcha.
it's getting dangerous, it's getting crazy, and knew that somebody was going to say, well, you show me where that policy is. And so, you know, so we figured we needed to have something in writing that was a policy. But yeah, we probably could figure a way to incorporate it in confidentiality policy that would say something like, you know, this includes not XYZ, you know.
Just a thought.
And once those pictures are out there, once they're posted, they're there. They never go away.
And I don't have any problem with the policy per se. I just, if it's an issue, then to me it needs to be stated much harsher than what you're saying here. Flat, do not
No.
post pictures of foster children in your care, period. Because while I, as the foster parent, may not post, there's nothing to stop Mary, whose birthday party they were at, from posting. If you're trying to get away from the potential for stalking or harassment, that's, you haven't solved that by this policy because of the ability for other people to post
Then the
those
child could not
images.
ever go anywhere.
So I just,
Well, see, and I know that the manager has a question, but see, I see that if they're at Susie Jones's birthday party, and Susie's mama takes a picture and posts it,
You can't
there's
control
no
that.
way that that's gonna be said, here's my foster child, whatever.
What,
But if Susie Jones is the foster parent,
Exactly. You
and
just don't do
she,
it.
you know, takes this picture and posts it, and here's the child sitting there, and, you know, there's probably going to be some comments under there about who all was at. I mean, you'd be surprised how many comments show up, even though the folks don't believe that they are outing the child as a foster child. They are, in fact, making comments that make it very clear this is a foster child.
Two siblings taking pictures someplace.
Yeah.
And one sibling know that this is not my whole brother or my whatever, or my half-brother, that's an indication.
And you know, I'm
We
not gonna
can't
give
stop it.
specific examples, because for one thing, it might show up in the media, and then the people that I'm talking about will know. But I you know, I agree, it's going to be hard to
It's
enforce.
very hairy.
I agree, it's going to be something that we're gonna have to continually talk about. But again, I agree, we need to, I believe strongly we need to lay it out there as something that needs to be handled, so that folks are clear that we don't want these pictures
At least we
out
looked
there.
at it.
Yeah, we don't want the pictures out there, them posting their foster child and talking about, you know, maybe not on that particular posting, but just above it or just below it. My foster child and I did X, Y, Z, and, you know, and so, and this is my daughter and here's Susie. I mean, it just gets messy.
Do you need an adoption?
We need a
I
motion.
move,
the manager, wait.
oh, we get
Yes.
it. Would.
A quick question, if a foster child has access or possession to a smartphone themselves, and they want to post a picture of themselves in their house, their homemates, children,
Friends.
Right, they can
is this
post.
policy addressed them?
No,
So they are free to,
they're free to
Do
do whatever. I
whatever
mean,
they
I can't police that.
okay.
But I can police as best I can, what my foster parents are doing.
That's why I brought about children and with children
They
doing things.
Can't touch.
That sound bad. Madam Chair,
Well, let me ask one more question. Right now, they already sign a confidentiality
They
statement?
sign a confidentiality statement.
My preference, while we can adopt this today, my preference would be to go back and look at what they are signing and expand it
Tweak
to
it.
incorporate social media is a part of the overall confidentiality piece.
I think
And
that
I think
can
you
be
need
done.
something to go backwards, but moving forward with new foster parents, it should just be a part of confidentiality, not only includes, you know, telephone calls and blah, 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 but social media.
part of it.
Right.
It's just part of the
I-
process. I
I-
think you can do that.
But that's
yes,
just my preference.
it's possible, it's good to do that. But if you don't specifically identify social media,
Oh, no, I think you have to, but I
if you
think
don't specifically have that policy, you're gonna run into, well, they didn't put emphasis on it. This emphasizes it's a no-no.
And
That's what I'm seeing this as. This emphasizes that it's a no-no.
And I have what they currently sign on the foster parent agency agreement. All our foster parents sign this agreement prior to licensure, and what it states is maintain continuous contact and exchange of information between the supervising agency and the foster parents about matters affecting the adjustment of any child placed in the home. The foster parent shall agree to keep these matters confidential and discuss them only with the supervising agency, staff members, or with other professional people designated by the agency. So that's basically what they signed.
Yeah, I think this would be,
In
this
the
is more defined.
Yeah.
But again, moving forward, why not have something that speaks specifically to social media in that? Because to me, that's a contract they're signing with you, which lays out a lot of the things you're expecting that foster parent to do.
I think it can be done.
So, but I mean, I don't have a problem with the policy. I just think you're gonna have a lot of, it's gonna add some workload and it's gonna be slippery and so I like the just no posting period. But then I'm an anti-Facebook person, so I think people overshare everything. So what would you like from us, Jan?
A motion to approve or reject.
I'm inclined to approve it, because if you don't specify and bring it to full attention, then what I thought is too much of a vague thing. So I'd like to offer the motion that we adopt this policy.
Are you saying having basically two things that they
Yes,
sign
indeed.
of confidentiality? One for the general that already exists, and then a separate one that addresses social media?
Yes, that's what I'm saying in my motion, because it highlights social media. It won't become a standard norm of whatever. This is specifically referring to social media, and it won't get lost in the gamut of it all. I've gone to meetings where sometimes they're talking about one thing and people start discussing something else, and the whole effort is lost into the real reason for it. But social media policy is right there. When they go back home and sit down, they can see, oh, I can't do social media.
I'd like to
May
offer
I-
a second to the motion.
May I ask Tammy a question?
Sure.
You're the expert.
Thank you.
How important do you think it is that we are, do you think it would be significant, more significant, if you made the social media, the social networks, a single contract to sign?
I do.
You do think it would be?
I think it needs to be separate. I
Okay.
really do.
All right, well then that's my, I agree. I second your motion.
And you're gonna go backwards and get everybody that already has a contract with this agency to sign an amendment to their contract or an additional contract.
They will sign that they received this and understand it.
And that will be a cannonball, right? Okay.
Okay. And
I had
then-
already seconded the motion.
Oh, excuse me.
Yeah, we were in the discussion since it had been
Sorry.
moved and seconded. So the motion has been properly moved and seconded to create a social media policy, which is an additional contract that existing and future foster parents will sign. All those in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. The next item is an item for report. You probably need to hit the highlights because we are,
Well, you all have received the document, the objectives report, and the update for the quarter. Hopefully, you had a chance to review it. Maybe I could entertain, are there any questions?
well, are there, because this is the action July 1 through September 30, right?
Right.
Is there anything significant that says we are off schedule, way ahead of schedule? Oh my God, we're gonna get hit by the rock because we're not where we need to be schedule.
No, we are fluctuating up and down a little bit in a variety of areas. We are, but not hugely. For example, you can see that our Child Protective Services, 95% of children receiving services are not repeat victims. The goal is 95%. We were at 90% at the end of last year. That last quarter We're at 82.6% now, and remember, this data's a little strange anyway based on when it's picked up. But at the same time, our foster children are achieving permanence at a higher rate than they were. We are having fewer placements in that 12-month period. So we're up and down a little bit, but it's not huge differences. I would say that the vacant positions, we did see some increase, and that was due to for the length of time, and that was due to some long-standing vacancies that we'd had trouble being filled now, so those showed up. And we're gonna have that again, I think, the next quarter, because some of those. I will say that for the revenue and expenses, that is probably looking very strange to folks, because you're showing that we're at 12% after the first quarter. You would anticipate us being at 17%. It's running behind because, and Angela's gonna have to address this with an amendment to the county at some point, not right this second, but we budgeted the full daycare expense and revenue, and we budgeted the full Medicaid transportation revenues. But NC Fast has taken those over, so those revenues and expenses are not going to all run through our budget. So the revenues now are going to be significantly reduced as a result of that. But because NC Fast was constantly behind, and it's good that we did budget daycare, because we wound up having to pay out of county, through the county, for the first quarter. So, you know, had we not done that, that would have created a major problem.
Corresponding budget amendment would bring down revenues and expenditures.
Bring down revenues. And Angela will have to respond to that one.
Yeah, their budget amendment has been done to bring down the revenues and the expenditures
Right.
for both daycare and Medicaid transportation.
But when you calculate revenues received to date and your divisor becomes smaller, then you've received more of your
Right.
total budget.
Right.
So that's gonna make it look different than it does right this minute.
Yep.
So
Do you
when
have a target date for when you'll bring those down into alignment?
I submitted the budget amendments this week. So I reduced the budget, the revenue, and the expenditures for daycare by $7 million, and I reduced the Medicaid transportation by $1 million. So.
Okay. So those were some of the big things. I mean, again, the fluctuations were pretty minimal, and if anybody's got any questions, I'll be happy to share those.
Jan, I have a question. I don't know whether it kind of relates to this, but it doesn't. And last month, we took action on some foster care help in terms of, are they in place? Have you seen any impact, or where do we stand with that?
We've had difficulty even locating people through the temp service. Angela has been working on that.
Yeah, we've gotten the contract approved, everything's been signed, but Vanguard has been contacting me weekly, and they're saying that they're having an issue finding people that have experience in the area that we need.
Gotcha.
So they're still looking, but they're having an issue with it right now.
But hopefully we'll have somebody on board shortly to help. Okay, if nobody's got any questions about that, we can zip through to talk about the other things in the director's report. The vacancy report, I know at least 3 more folks have been, had recommendations made since this particular document was done, so we continue to hire, recruit, that kind of thing, so that's happening. Anybody got any questions on that? We are doing, well, we're not gonna run through that. Okay, we are doing a lot of promoting from within, so we're doing some turnover, which creates another vacancy, so you will see some of that. The timeliness application report, you have a copy of that at your desk, at your seat, because I don't think it was ready when we didn't get the information in time. But you can see that we're above standard in every area, and have continued, for the most part, to improve pretty good. I mean, a little drop here and there, but still staying well above standard. I will say that the state released their Medicaid application processing report to the legislature in the last week or so, and a lot of the counties had significant problems The report was a 12-month report. We hadn't been able to see the data for a while. The data had some errors in it. NC Fast was a major problem in part of it. And so many counties had many months of failure. So the state has said, as we have said in this report, that they're really not going to hold us accountable for the past 12 months. It starts July 1 of this year. And so that's what we're going to be held accountable for. But they have to do a report by law to the legislature every November on how application processing is going. So that there was a problem with that. Anybody got any questions about that? We're doing well, I think. The House Bill 630 and Senate Bill 546, I wanted to give you some brief updates on that, and I am certainly sorry that the manager left. The House Bill 630 is Ryland's Law, and I'll try and type this up and send it to y'all, but it's been a hectic couple of weeks. The Phase 1, which is running October through April, is focusing on state supervision. The work group at the School of Government with the appointees by the various legislative bodies has been meeting. They met October 3rd, October 3rd, and I believe November 3rd. The next meeting scheduled for November 28th. They're going to have a total of 10 meetings. They hope to have everything wrapped up by March 31st because their report has to be to the legislature by April 15. You can listen in if you are interested in listening in, or you can even go and sit on the sidelines if you're interested in sitting on the sidelines of the committee report or committee meetings. You can see all the documents and the data. This is a very open process. I know I listened in on the first one, didn't get a chance on the second one. It's been very interesting. They're working a lot between meetings. Currently, they're focused on the role of regional offices and what state supervision through those regional offices would look like. What are the roles of the central office, the regional office, and the county staff? They've looked at past experience with regional offices. They've done a focus group with directors, and I got to participate on that, of what we would see as the role. And they've done some research on what other states are doing. And like I said, if anybody wants the link, I'll be happy to send it to them. So that's where they are right now. They focus a lot on child welfare because that was the initial impetus of the bill. But we laugh because the School of Government has a slide they've put up that keeps saying the whole enchilada. And it's got every program listed that DSSs operate. And every time they get hung up on child welfare, that slide pops up to remind them that they're talking about something different. So it's been interesting listening and hearing some of the different pieces. So they are moving along. Phase 2 is they'll be talking about the regionalization of counties. That is still on the radar. And so there is an RFP out now to study and develop a plan to reform social services in North Carolina. It did not specifically speak to regionalization, but it's going to all come together at some point. The RFP hit the street September 30. The responses were due October 26. The bids closed November the 9th. Next week, no, actually this week, they're going to begin review of those. The division heads and various subject matter experts are going to participate in the reviews. And within 2 weeks, they hope to be through with that review and have a recommendation for a vendor. And they plan to hire that vendor or announce that vendor mid-December, and then they've got to get through the contracting process. Once the contracts are signed, that vendor has 180 days to do a study of North Carolina and how we are to be handled.
That is
and so then there's a lot more to be done after that. And that's a preliminary report that's due in 180 days. So this is moving really fast. Every time in the committee meeting that's going on so far, if somebody says we need to slow this down, the senator stands up and says, y'all, we're going to move this along, and if you won't do it, I'll take it back, and we'll do it ourselves. So the marching orders are out there. Written agreements. The state has drafted framework for the written agreements that all counties will have to sign. Our world is changing greatly. We understand that the format is about 25 pages already. There are 66 performance measures that may be placed in these written agreements. They're talking about, they may reduce them a little bit. And that's for every activity that we do on behalf of the state. The only one that has not produced performance measures yet is childcare, so they're working on theirs still. And we have 30 days to review those performance measures and give them feedback on whether we agree or disagree with the performance measures, and it's a stack about like that. The Directors Association has put forward our request for performance from the state and what we believe we need from the state in order to make this happen. And we've put forward 35 items that we believe the state needs to be doing. And so there's a lot of negotiation going on, again, feedback. They want all this done and ready to roll out to everybody in December. The state is getting a report built that will provide all the data on one dashboard. They're also going to pull in 3 to 6 months of historical data and then be developing data henceforward. The first contract to be signed has got to be in place July 1, 2018. So we are moving right along on that. And it will be a generic contract for all counties. Those counties that contract out child support or daycare, those will be coming out of theirs, but for us, it'll be everything. The second year of the county specific, it'll be based on your county's performance and what you need to work on. The agreement allows the state to withhold funds if we are not meeting the metrics or in compliance with the agreement. And obviously, there will be written notification and opportunity to intervene prior to that. And that's one of the big discussions in the role of the state and the regional and all that kind of stuff is how do boards of commissions and social services boards, how does that interaction happen? And at what points does that happen? So that's one of the big topics of discussion. So that's kind of where we are with 630. And Medicaid is not included in this, if you all remember. Medicaid has its own bill, which is session law. It was at one point Senate Bill 546. It got rolled into the budget bill. It's in Chapter 108A, and it lays out all the reporting requirements that the state has to give us, how we're to react to those reports. The state has already got all those reports out except for one, and that is a report on folks who have passed away so that we can make sure we're tracking things like we should and closing cases like we should. Again, I've already mentioned the application process and report. Corrective action plans will go into place starting July 1 on the application process and report. Medicaid audits of county departments for accuracy are beginning July 1 of 2019. Accuracy standards are still being determined. They haven't finalized that. And there's also, if you all remember in this section, the payback piece for errors in Medicaid that the counties will have to put forward, takeover plans, corrective action plans, very similar to what is in House Bill 630 for the rest of the agency. And during all of this lovely activity, Medicaid transformation is also going on, they anticipate Medicaid transformation going live July 1 of 2019, which changes the Medicaid world dramatically. And we'll talk about that at a different time. So agencies a lot going on that agencies are trying to deal with. Plus, we're implementing NC fast January 22nd. So anybody got any questions about what's going on? But I think, I think periodically I need to give you all these kinds of updates about where it stands, so that you'll kind of know how it's moving forward. And I'll be happy to share, like I say, any of the documents we've received to date, the data that they're talking about, if anybody wants a copy of that, and then, like I say, the links to those meetings if you're interested in sitting in on those meetings. So.
Are they posting it, the information, Jim? Is it online?
Yes,
Can you just
you-
go to that?
if you go to the legislature, there's a section there, or you can go to the School of Government's website, and there's a section there, and they've got the agendas. You can actually go listen, because they've got the sessions recorded, and any of the handouts and documents that are attached here, you can look at all those. So. Okay.
And what do the rest of you think about another update on this at the retreat in January? I mean, that's sort of 60 days further down the line. I think that's an item that,
Well, by then we'll know for sure what the indicators are.
right,
And that could change some of our data reporting to you all. And, we've got to fold all of this into the strategic plan that we hope to roll out to you all in January at the retreat too. So that's all got to get folded in. So, in your package, you have a copy of the communications plan we've put together. If anybody's got a question about that, you have a copy of the Alzheimer's Disease Awareness Month proclamation. You have my director's report if anybody's got a question about that. So I am pretty much through.
any more questions for Jan while we're on this part of the agenda? Any comments from the members of the board to share with the other members of the board?
I like the bottom of our agenda. It helps me with the calendar. And whoever brilliant idea it was, I thank you.
So, with that in mind, our next full board meeting is Tuesday, December 12th. We also then have the retreat in lieu of the January board meeting, so it's on January 9th at 2 p.m. at the Human Service Center, north of the river. So make sure you have those on your calendars. And then, yes, ma'am?
January 17th, on your list, there is a regional child welfare convening. We were told exactly who needed to go to that, and they wanted a county commissioner who was a DSS board member. Guess who is your representative?
Mary?
The county manager is going, I'm going, Tammy's going, and our county attorney for DSS and child welfare will be the five
That's gonna be
representing us.
Raleigh, right?
No, ma'am, it is in Edgecombe County.
Oh, wonderful.
So they're doing 3 across the state. So we'll have something
But
to
our
report
folks
back.
are all on notice that need to
Right.
be at that meeting.
Right, and so we can certainly do a report on that at the next meeting after that.
At the February meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, we will accept a motion to,
Madam Chairman, I so move that we adjourn.
all right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of adjournment, let it be known by saying aye. We are adjourned.
It says what?